The termination letter was already signed before sunrise. Security had escorted the quiet maintenance worker out of the towering glass headquarters while hundreds of employees watched without saying a word. By noon, the company's stock had begun to fall. By evening, the CEO stormed into the executive boardroom, slammed the file onto the polished table, and asked a single question that left every executive frozen. Who fired him? Silence filled the room because no one could answer. No one knew that the humble single father they had dismissed was secretly worth billions of dollars, and no one imagined that losing him would become the most expensive mistake in the company's history. Before we begin this unforgettable story, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire if you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that true character is worth more than appearances. Your support helps bring more inspiring stories to people around the world. Morning sunlight poured through the streets of Melbourne as 42-year-old Rowan Mercer quietly walked his 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, to school. Their mornings never changed. Rowan carried her backpack even though she insisted she was old enough to carry it herself. She laughed at the pigeons chasing crumbs across the sidewalk while he reminded her to be kind to everyone because nobody ever knew what another person was carrying inside their heart. After hugging his daughter goodbye, Rowan changed into his faded blue maintenance uniform and boarded a crowded bus toward one of Australia's fastest-growing technology companies. Every passenger saw an ordinary working father heading to another ordinary job. None of them could have imagined that Rowan owned investment portfolios stretching across several countries, quietly controlled charitable foundations worth billions, and had once built a revolutionary software company before selling it years earlier. Wealth had never interested him. After losing his wife to a sudden illness, Rowan had chosen the one thing money could never replace: time with his daughter. Working as a maintenance employee gave him a peaceful routine and allowed him to understand people without them treating him differently because of his fortune. Inside the headquarters, Rowan greeted everyone with the same gentle smile. He fixed broken lights before anyone noticed them. He repaired leaking pipes before complaints reached management. He remembered birthdays, encouraged nervous interns, and always left little handmade paper stars on the desks of employees who looked overwhelmed. Many workers appreciated him, but very few actually knew his name. To most executives, he was simply another invisible employee wearing a uniform. The company itself was struggling beneath its impressive appearance. Deadlines were being missed. Employee morale had collapsed. Departments blamed one another for every failure. Managers competed instead of cooperating. Everyone focused on impressive presentations while ignoring the people actually keeping the business alive. Rowan noticed everything because people rarely hide their true character around someone they believe is invisible. He quietly observed exhausted programmers sleeping at their desks, receptionists wiping away tears after difficult customers, cleaners skipping lunch to finish impossible workloads, and junior engineers afraid to share brilliant ideas because senior managers wanted all the credit. Whenever Rowan could help, he did. Sometimes he repaired a coffee machine just before an exhausted night shift arrived. Sometimes he quietly paid for groceries when he saw an employee struggling financially. Sometimes he simply listened. He never expected recognition. He believed that kindness only mattered when no applause followed. Unknown to everyone, Rowan was also the company's largest silent investor. Years earlier, after selling his own technology empire, he had purchased a significant share of the business through private investment firms. He never attended shareholder meetings. He never demanded influence. He wanted the company to succeed because thousands of families depended on it. If leadership genuinely cared for employees, he believed the business would naturally prosper. Unfortunately, one ambitious executive named Victor Hale believed appearances mattered more than integrity. Victor wanted to impress the board by cutting costs aggressively. He proudly announced a campaign to eliminate what he called unnecessary expenses. Maintenance budgets, cafeteria staff, cleaners, and support teams were all placed under review. Rowan became just another number on a spreadsheet. Without speaking to him once, Victor signed the termination papers. Security guards apologized while escorting Rowan outside. They knew he had never caused trouble. Rowan simply smiled, thanked them for always treating people respectfully, and walked away carrying a small cardboard box containing family photographs, a worn coffee mug, and a tiny drawing Hazel had made of them holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. The employees watched through office windows with heavy hearts. Some wanted to speak up but feared losing their own jobs. Others convinced themselves someone else would intervene. Nobody did. That afternoon, strange things began happening. Several major investors unexpectedly delayed important agreements. A planned international partnership was suddenly suspended. Financial analysts questioned recent management decisions. Rumors spread throughout the business community that the company had abandoned its people-first culture. Confidence faded rapidly. Meanwhile, Rowan returned home before Hazel finished school. Instead of showing sadness, he baked her favorite chocolate muffins. When she arrived, she immediately noticed he was home early. Rowan smiled gently and told her that sometimes life closed one door because something more meaningful waited behind another. Hazel hugged him tightly and whispered that he was still the strongest person she knew. The next morning, the company's CEO, Adrienne Sloan, returned from an overseas business conference. She immediately noticed unusual financial reports covering her desk. Millions of dollars had disappeared from projected revenue overnight. Investors were requesting emergency meetings. Trusted partners were suddenly hesitant. Something had gone terribly wrong. Adrienne spent hours investigating until one senior advisor quietly mentioned the maintenance employee who had been dismissed the previous day. Curious, she requested his personnel file. Instead of finding disciplinary reports or poor performance, she discovered years of glowing recommendations from every department. Employees consistently described Rowan as dependable, compassionate, intelligent, and quietly responsible for solving countless problems beyond his job description. Even stranger, confidential board documents revealed an anonymous shareholder controlling an enormous percentage of company stock through investment trusts. As legal teams continued their investigation, an astonishing truth emerged. The anonymous investor and the maintenance worker were the same person. Adrienne felt the room spin. She immediately gathered every executive. The boardroom fell silent as she held Rowan's employee badge in one hand and the shareholder records in the other. Her voice echoed across the polished table. Who fired him? Nobody answered. Victor slowly lowered his eyes. For the first time in years, his confidence disappeared. Adrienne wasn't angry because they had dismissed a billionaire. She was furious because they had dismissed the one employee who had quietly demonstrated the values the company claimed to represent. They had judged a man entirely by his uniform while completely ignoring his character. Reporters soon uncovered Rowan's extraordinary story. Headlines across Australia described the billionaire who chose to clean hallways instead of seeking attention. Interviews with former employees revealed years of anonymous generosity. Hospitals confirmed donations that had saved children's lives. Schools spoke about scholarships that transformed struggling families. Food banks described mysterious benefactors who never revealed their identities. The entire nation became fascinated by the quiet single father who believed true wealth meant helping people without expecting gratitude. Adrienne drove personally to Rowan's modest home. She found him watering a small vegetable garden while Hazel laughed nearby chasing butterflies beneath the warm afternoon sun. Rowan welcomed her kindly without mentioning the dismissal. Adrienne apologized sincerely, admitting that the company had failed its own principles. She asked him to return, offering any position he desired, including a permanent seat on the executive board. Rowan listened respectfully before explaining that titles had never interested him. Buildings could always be repaired. Broken cultures were much harder to fix. If he returned, it would only be because every employee, from cleaners to engineers, would be treated with equal dignity. Adrienne agreed immediately. The months that followed transformed the company completely. Management training shifted from profit alone toward compassion and accountability. Every employee received opportunities to share ideas directly with leadership. Support staff gained recognition programs. Mental health services expanded. Promotions rewarded integrity as much as performance. Turnover dropped dramatically. Innovation increased because employees finally felt heard. Victor resigned quietly, realizing authority without humility eventually destroys itself. Rowan accepted a simple advisory role while continuing many of his maintenance duties because he genuinely enjoyed helping people face to face. Employees often found him fixing a loose chair one moment and discussing long-term business strategy with executives the next. Nothing about his kindness changed after the world learned about his fortune. Hazel watched her father become a symbol of hope across Australia, yet every evening he still helped with homework, cooked dinner, and reminded her that kindness was life's greatest investment. Years later, business schools studied the remarkable turnaround, but financial success wasn't the most important lesson. The greatest achievement was creating a workplace where every person felt respected regardless of job title, clothing, or background. People eventually forgot the exact amount Rowan was worth because the number no longer mattered. They remembered the maintenance worker who quietly carried a toolbox through office hallways while carrying a heart richer than anyone could measure. Before this story comes to an end, if Rowan's journey touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a meaningful comment, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire so more inspiring stories of courage, kindness, and second chances can reach people everywhere. Special request. Comment below. True wealth begins with kindness. We'd love to know where you're watching from and what lesson this story meant to you. As another beautiful daytime sunrise lit the city, employees entered the headquarters with smiles instead of fear. The same hallways that once echoed with silence now carried laughter, gratitude, and hope. Rowan walked through them carrying his familiar toolbox, greeting everyone exactly as he always had. Nothing about his heart had changed because kindness was never a role he played, it was simply who he was. His billions had impressed the world for only a moment, but his humility inspired people for generations. In the end, the greatest fortune was never hidden in bank accounts or investment portfolios. It lived inside a father who chose compassion over pride, service over status, and love over recognition. That is why, long after the headlines disappeared, people still remembered the quiet single dad who proved that the richest person in any room is the one who never forgets the value of another human being.